Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Malorian and this is Malorian Weekly. Now what we're going to be talking about today is actually stealing a little bit from one of my other hobbies. So one of the other games that I enjoy quite a lot is Magic the Gathering. I don't enjoy all of it, but I really like the commander part of it. That's kind of a side of all this. However, there's always interesting takeaways when you compare one hobby to another. And in this case, there has been a very set way that the Magic community has described different player types and, where do you fall into this whole thing? And I think the same thing can be applied to Warmachine. And the reason why these player types are interesting, it's one thing to know, oh, I'm a this, I'm a that. However, the other thing is well, what are you going to do with this information? How is this actually going to be changing the way you play and actually interact with others? So with that, let's jump into it just so you understand the way it goes. There's basically going to be 3 general classifications, and then after that, 2 others. So we'll have to cover both sets of these. And another thing to talk about getting into this is that it's not really like an all or none type thing, right? A lot of people are a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and depending on their mood or their circumstance, maybe they lean to one way or another. But in general, one of these main things that we're describing is the way that people generally lean in their gaming. And again, it's something that after we're done describing what these are, at the end, we can get to the takeaways and what this can really mean for you. So the very first one here is called the Timmy or Tammy, and what they really are the player that loves big splashy plays. They're the ones that want to do something that's going to be getting a wow from the crowd and is going to be this is going to be remembered. It's important that I'm doing this right now because this is making memories. This is important. This is the big fireworks that are going off. So of course, in the Magic side, they'd be playing the big splashy spells and stuff like that. But when it comes to Warmachine, maybe this is the player that they're going for, they love having the big, huge models out there that everyone's oh, wow, that's massive. Or they really like having, the supremely good paint job. Or they're going to go for, these huge daring plays. Whatever it is, whether, what part of the hobby it is in Warmachine, they're looking for that big explosion, that big flashy type of thing in what they're trying to do. Now, the next one we're going to be looking at here is the Johnny/Jenny. And what this player is all about is really trying to figure out not what is the most common, but trying to figure out their own little take on it. I think a good word for this when it comes to Warmachine is the jank player, right? They're not going off and trying to do a big splashy thing or, trying to grab the biggest net deck or anything like that. What they're trying to do is by looking through and analyzing the smaller rules that maybe a lot of other people would look over, they find different ways oh, if I do this and this and this all kind of comes together and can be really powerful type thing, right? So again, they're always trying to build their own special little brew, and they get a lot of enjoyment from that. Just like how the last group there, the Timmy Tammy, wanted to be the big things, I want to have memories. Well, the big one here, what they're looking for is to really show their own creativity, right? They want, if they had a goal for what their opponent to be at the end, they're oh, wow, that was really interesting what you had done. I had never thought of that before. That's the type of thing that they're going after. The last one here is just called the Spike. And the Spike, they're just trying to be all out competitive. Their singular goal is just to win. So I know when it comes to tabletop wargaming, that's probably the win at all cost player, that type of person. But really this is what they're trying to do, right? They're in this hobby because they enjoy winning. When they're trying to play a game, what they're really trying to see after is I want to do whatever I can so that I can come on top and I'm going to beat you. And that's what I want to remember from this game is that I came in and I won. And now that we've kind of covered all these, I think the biggest thing to understand is that not any of these are right or wrong. Anyone can enjoy the hobby that they want. And again, pretty much a lot of people probably lean a little way into all of these, but probably while I was describing them, you're oh, okay, I think I kind of fit more into this one than that one. So like I said, there's two different classifications. We'll get into the second one in a bit, but before we get there, I want to talk about, well, that's great, Malorian. I guess I have a new label I can put on my shirt or my hat or whatever, but what am I going to do with this? And I think the really important thing to do is, one, you could be looking at how, like, oh, this is how I am as a player, and maybe can lean into that and find, like, you know, if I now know from this that I find enjoyment from trying to do things that are janky, maybe I'll just embrace that now. Be like, yeah, you know what? This is what I find enjoyment with, and I'm just going to go for that. But I think in general, a lot of people already do that, right? The things you're doing are because you enjoy them. What I think you can actually get more from understanding these classifications, though, is how to deal with other players. So if you start thinking about other people in your play group, or as you meet them and you maybe start want to try and think about these things, how are you going to interact with them differently based on what you are and what they mainly are, or what at least you perceive they are. All right, so we're first going to take this from the viewpoint of the Timmy. So if you are a Timmy Tammy, this is the one where we're looking for the big splashy plays, and you're up against somebody else that's a Timmy Tammy. Well, in that case, man, this game should be exciting because everybody's just trying to be like, bam, this big thing there, boom, this big thing there, and you're both kind of going after the same thing. In fact, you're going to kind of see this as we go through, that if you face the same type of player, well, yeah, that's going to probably work out really well in your favor because, hey, what I'm trying to do, we're both trying to do, and especially in this case here where I just want to make this exciting. I'm going to go for this crazy play, and then you're going to go for that crazy play, and at the end, wow, there's going to be so many stories because we just attempted and put such crazy things on the board that, wow, we're going to remember this forever. So if you are a Timmy Tammy facing the same thing on the other side, congratulations, that's going to be an amazing game. Now, let's say that you're going to be this Timmy Tammy versus the Johnny Jenny. So now you're there with your big flashy stuff. And you're up against somebody that is more like they're jank and they're sneaky and stuff like that. I think the very first thing, it's the COVID, it's got me. I think the very first thing you want to think about is that you don't want to be putting them down, right? In your mind, you want to be using the biggest, the baddest, the splashiest, but they're not doing that. They're using weird, smaller models that people don't usually use, and that's kind of weird. And it might be very tempting to be like, oh, well, I don't know what that's all about. But at the same time, if you're a person there that I want to have the memories, the fact that you're playing it something weird and different might already kind of like resonate with you, and that's going to be okay. And that's going to be, you know, still something you're going to take away and like from this game. However, they have an ulterior motive, right? Like, whereas you're just trying to be like, boom, you know, colossal to the face, they're doing something like, okay, if I do this, and then I'll trigger this ability, then this will happen. So you should be prepared that while you're trying to do your big splashy thing, they're going to have their little, you know, little mechanics going in the background. And again, coming from where you're coming from, that might be actually okay for you, right? If it turns out that, all right, I'm going to pop my feet, I'm going to do this spell, I'm going to send this in, and then they're like, oh, just wait a second, you triggered this, and this is going to do this, that's going to put a soul over here, and you know, as long as it doesn't slow things down to the point that you're like, oh, come on, I want to get back to the big things, that might actually add to your story. Like, then you can tell people after, like, yeah, I sent this in, and then they came in and countered it. It was crazy, it was weird. But I think that real risk there is what I was saying, that it might slow things down. You're like, come on, let's get to it. I know you're trying to piece together these things, but what's going on here? You know, like, they're going to be spending more time being more careful with their positioning, allocation. This has to be just right for all these things to fit. Whereas you're just like, yep, turn to 11, go. So that can throw you off. But I think that the big challenge there is to really lean into, let's see how we can make this a bigger, enjoyable story, as opposed to, you're slowing my game down. All right, the next one here then is obviously if you are the Timmy Tammy, what if you're up against the Spike? You are now up against someone where, you know, like, their only goal is to win. They're not going to care whether I do something big or splashy. That's all they're caring about is just the win, and that's it. Well, I think you should be taking that on as a challenge and being like, you know what? Let's see how big I can splash. I know they took the biggest and the best and all that type of stuff, or maybe not the biggest, but just the best. So I'm going to take my thing to 11 and see if I can break through whatever they went for. I would more lean onto that challenge as opposed to me getting like downtrodden and be like, oh, like of course they took that best caster in the game with the best theme. Oh, no, yeah, of course they took that broken new solo. Now I can't even do my big splashy thing. And so that might be the case. It might be the case that they have now designed their list to shut down the things that you were going to do big and splashy. And now your list doesn't do the big important things you wanted to. And you're just in a lot of trouble now. Maybe you're supposed to be coming in guns a-blazing and they're going to just shut it down and nothing really happens that's memorable. It's like, oh, I killed some shield guards and he had to decrease damage with some focus. That's not really the story you're trying to build in, but I think you have to more so internalize it yourself and be like, no, I'm going to try and find some way to fight through this and overcome it. And that's the best way that you're going to try and enjoy that game. Again, a lot of these things here are looking at how it could go wrong and then making sure you steer this a different way. All right, so that's it for Timmy Tammy, if that's the way you're looking. Now we're going to be changing that perspective so that you're going to be the Johnny Jenny. Now you're the person that's the jank player. You're the person that's trying to do the combined arms. You're the person that's trying to make the intricate machine and really trying to show your creativity in the way that you're playing your game. Well, what happens if you face one of those Timmy Tammys? Well, that means that something big and splashy is coming your way, and you probably already have a plan for that, right? When you're going and making your intricate designs, you're thinking about all these big things you might have to deal with, and so you probably already have part of your plan to be dealing with that. And so all you really have to do is start dealing with it. So I think this will be a good game, something you can find very enjoyable. Hopefully it's not something that's so overpowering that you can't do your little thing, but I think this will be great. It'll be like, all right, we set our defenses. We are having the massive giant storming down at us. Let's see if my defensive mechanism that I had constructed is actually going to deal with this type thing. So I think you're going to just find a pretty straightforward, easy game right there. Now, what if you're having the Johnny Jenny versus another Johnny Jenny? Again, I think this is going to be a fantastic matchup for you. Both of you are going to be taking wild, underused models. We're trying to figure out different jank things to do. And because you're both of the same mind, you're going to be like, okay, what are you trying to do this time? Okay, you took this and this. What's the play here? What are you trying to do? And I think that understanding of trying to be like, what's the puzzle that the other person made? And both of them are doing them at the same time and probably even getting more ideas, right? Like, oh yeah, that's a pretty interesting idea. I wonder what else I could do with it. I think, again, that'll be a very, very enjoyable game and something you're really going to enjoy. Now, let's talk about the Johnny Jenny versus the Spike. So now you got your little jank play going up against someone that's just there to crush. And I think this is going to be a very difficult game for you. Now, probably that they're going to be the case is because what they're taking is the best, right? They're taking whatever they took because it probably dominates the meta, but you might be okay. You might have a dark horse. You might have something that's not really covered there, but where you're probably going to really find yourself in trouble is when that Spike is being like, okay, I don't know what's going over there. What's your threat? What's your total maximum threat? Okay, tell me, what does this do? What is this caster? What are all these things? And then all of a sudden, that jank play that you were hoping to be pulling off is just getting unraveled. Because, if they ask the right questions and assuming that you're acting in a good-natured way, you're like, okay, well, my overall threat, if I put everything together, is this and this and this, because I actually have this for that and this for this. So when you add these together, I can actually thread out this amount. Oh, okay, it's one of those things. Or whatever the jank play is, they're probably going to ask the right questions so they don't walk into it. Or again, kind of like how we kind of said for the other one when they're facing the Spike, you might just not be in a good spot to even use your jank at all, right? They have something that just completely shuts it down. Normally, your intricate play has a lot of different things that have to work together, and if their meta-dominant list shuts down any one of those chains in that link or is able to tear any of that part apart, it might be over for you, and that's it. It's like, okay, I had this, music box that's going to play this beautiful music, but you kind of ripped off the gear, and okay, it doesn't do anything anymore. Okay, good game, I guess. And you're not getting anything from it. So I think where possible, you have to kind of like lean more into the jank portion. Maybe you can get more into like a conversation, like, hey, isn't this an interesting play? Do you think this could all be competitive? How can you take this interesting idea and make it more competitive? So again, try and lean to more of those things to being like, well, you shut me down and this game's over. All right, let's talk about if you're the spike. So if you're going into this and you're just like, hey, look, I'm here to play a game. This game is all about who wins, so that's why I'm obviously here. I'm going to try and win. Now, if you're doing that and you come up against one of those first ones we talked about, the Timmy, the Tammy, the one that likes the big explosive play, you're going to be looking out for those things. You know that they want to basically, they have a bazooka, they want to shoot. They're trying to make this big thing, so you're going to be very careful that whatever you do, that you're not going to let them do that. Or you're going to do exactly the opposite, and you are going to let them do it in a suboptimal way. You might be like, okay, I'm obviously not going to set them up so they can go and assassinate my caster, but I know they really, really want to do this big thing, so why don't you do it to this? And then, so that way you can do your big, huge, splashy play, kill that thing, but in the end, I still have more pieces, I'm still going to win, you know, I'm giving you something unimportant just so you can basically shoot off your bazooka and the rest of my more important forces will just walk through unharmed. So I think if you look at it that way, you can definitely find that win-win. The realizing that their main goal is not to win, their main goal is to do that something big and memorable. So if you allow them to do that, which doesn't necessarily stop you from winning, hey, that's a great thing for you. Now, what if you're going to be that person that's going to be up against that Johnny or Jenny, the one that's looking for that jank play, something, you know, really insightful and creative? Well, the thing you have to do right away, because again, your goal is to win, is to figure out what that creative play is. You know, if you walk into this and think like, oh, they're just like a newer player, they don't even have a style yet, you can be really caught off guard if all of a sudden they pull together the jank and then boom, you get assassinated out of nowhere. So if you understand that the person you're playing is that Johnny or Jenny, what you're going to want to do is really break things down and try and figure out how you can, first of all, their mechanism works, and then how you can pick it apart. Now, again, that can be one way, but like I said for the other one, you might want to turn that one around and realize that they want to go click, 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 something cool. So, okay, what if I let you click, 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 click on this? Or what if I go, okay, you can click, click, click like this, and you'll think like, haha, my machine did what it was supposed to do, but it's not a win condition. So I can still go for my win condition as normal. Again, this is trying to make it so that both players are walking out of this friendly-like, and I think that's really important because there's a real stigma when it comes to Warmachine, that there's these win-at-all-cost players, and they're wrecking the game, and oh, you know, I just came here to have fun, and it just crushed me. But look, you know, it's still valid for you to try and win these games. So if you want that thing to not be something in your area, you might want to be thinking about these things so that, okay, I'm going to let them do that thing, but I'm still going to set myself up for the win, and then everyone's going to leave happy. Now here's the other one, the last one we have here, which is Spike versus Spike. Now if you ever have that, there's no pretenses. There's just like, look, we're both here to win. Let's go for it. And I think one of the things that you just might want to be a little bit clear on this, especially when it comes to Warmachine, are very simple things like take backs and blah, 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 because that's where some of these things can get very cutthroat, because I mean, like, it's clear. Both of you are in this to win, and you're going to do whatever possible within reason to try and win this game. So you want to make sure that everything is defined. You want to make sure that when you walk into it, it is 100% clear what the terrain is, what the social acceptance is going to be between you for, you know, clocks and, you know, take backs or anything like that. And then just enjoy the game. If you go and set up all those things at the very beginning, you both are going to enjoy just playing your chess match and trying to see who's going to be the biggest winner in the end. Who's the one that can triumph over the other. And so again, do that pre-work so that you can just enjoy the game after that. All right, those are the general three classes that they have there. But as I said, there's that other group with two more. So let's quickly go and cover them. Now, whereas the first one there was more so talking about like what you're looking to get from the game and, you know, what are you going to get your enjoyment from? This next one here is more so what you're looking for, right? Now, what I mean by that, the first one here is the Melvin, Melanie, and what they're trying to do is just they care about the mechanics. They want to look into something and understand how it works. You know, the best way to think about this is that if a new unit, a new caster was spoiled in Warmachine, the first thing you do is you go and look at the rules because that's what you care about. Again, that's not a bad thing, but that's just, you know, a way that some people are. The other side of this is the Vorthos. Now, what the Vorthos cares about is the flavor and the backstory. You know, when they hear that, oh, there's a new caster out, well, what's the story for it? You know, like what faction? How does it fall in? Like, what's their station? How did they get to where they got to? That's what they really care about, and that's what they really enjoy. Now, like we said for the other grouping, neither of these are wrong, and you can actually be like a combination, basically, probably just leaning one way more than the other. However, this is also in combination with everything else we said here before. You know, if we're talking about the Timmy Tammy, you want the big splashy play, but maybe the big splashy play to you is, you know, it might be rules-based, be like, oh man, this thing is super powerful, let's go and put it out there because it's the biggest of this or whatever it is number-wise. Or maybe it's the Vorthos, and to you, your big splashy thing is, hey, look, man, I got to put, you know, like Haley out on the table. Or maybe it's something, you know how they have like those alternate casters where you can put out like Vinter and stuff. Like to you, that's like, yeah, I put Vinter down, and it's a big splashy thing. Everyone's gonna remember it because this is such a cool person from the story. You know, like that type of thing is what they're looking to try and get for. Same thing can be applied to the Johnny and the Jenny, where they're looking for that creative part, right? I think we really think of that one more so for, you know, that trying to find the mechanics and trying to find the way to make it work, to make it win. But Vorthos can be in there too, where you're trying to do that within a theme. Like, okay, I'm going to go and do this within the Trencher theme. I want everything to be right, but I'm going to have to make sure that everything clicks together so it does the right thing in the end. So that can also exist at the same time. Now, when it comes to the Spike player, I think there's a real good argument here that's almost always going to be mechanics, but, you know, it could go a little bit Vorthos as well, right? I can see a situation where you have a player like, look, all I care about is winning because I'm Signar and Signar doesn't lose. You know, like that type of thing, I can kind of see in there too. But just going to realize that there's that other layer to this as well. And when we were talking about before about how you're going to be interacting with these people, you can keep that portion in mind as well, right? Because again, while we're trying to figure out how we're interacting with them, how to make it so it's a win-win in the end, they're going to walk away happy, we're going to walk away happy. It's not just that style, but also what they're kind of looking for at the same time. So there you go. There's the different classification as players. I'm sure there's lots of other ways we could be saying it for Warmachine, but I really thought that this way that they do it for years in Magic the Gathering can be very well applied here in Warmachine. So there you have it. Please post down below if you're like, hey, I'm definitely this, or you had a different idea or a different twist on this. And anyway, we'll catch you later. Bye.